Hello, Christian. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, doing good. It's Wednesday, so
Hey, Musty Crip. See you up here on stage. What brings you up to the stage today? Okay, I'm going to send you back to the audience temporarily. If you've got a question later, put up your hand and I'll ask you back up. We'll do the questions at the end. So pardon me, but I'm going to move you. All right, everybody. Welcome. This is the OL Community Weekly Meeting. This is Rico. I am back as our host for the month of May. Danielle and Shashank and I are taking turns in the hot seat, as it were. And this month is mine. And we've got quite a bit on the agenda for today. We will start out as usual by looking at the state of OL. And then we've got Odie and some of the dev team with us up on the stage right now, and we're going to talk about just get a tech update, an engineering update, let you all know what's been happening across this last week and some of the changes and things that have occurred. We're also going to be exploring the proposed constitution for the project today. So if you're interested in the governance side of this project, this should be an interesting discussion for you as well. Okay, first off, thank you all for coming, and thanks for your continued support of the project. We've had an interesting and productive week. Where are we? What's the state of OL? Well, this is day 172, and currently we're sitting on Epoch 180. At this point in time, we have 29 validators up on the network, and Carpe is running. Carpe installations are, of course, way off considering what has occurred in terms of disruption across the last week or so, but we'll have more on that discussion later on today. Our Discord community continues to grow despite the problems. We're sitting at 3,335 members right now, and we're seeing some pretty good activity levels, particularly on the engineering side of things, which is super, super encouraging. All right, so moving into our usual agenda, I want to do a round the room on our working groups, and for that, I'm going to turn to the brokers who are up here, the archivists who are up here on the stage with me. Christian, do you want to start us off and give us the updates from your groups, please?
Sure. Yeah. So first, for the governance working group, 1 second. Sorry, pull my notes. Yeah, for the governance working group, I believe today, Rico, you'll be going over the high-level constitution and charter with the larger group. Is that correct? Or do we postpone that?
No, sorry, that is today. I just couldn't find the mute button.
Oh, no worries. I get in the same boat as well. And then at next week's meeting, we'll be going over ideally the steering council document and the interim governance process document as well next week. So basically, it's 2 weeks in a row of reviewing sort of kind of governance related documentation. Sorry, give me 1 second. My computer's going really slow. So moving on to the engineering working group. Here, I'm just going to switch looking on my phone. I think on the engineering working group, OD or others might be able to provide a better explanation, but it seems that sort of with regards to like the recent network restart, there's been an issue with state sync. And I think I'll defer to Zaki and OD if they want to. I imagine they'll dive into that a little bit more on the call. But one ask that came out of the call yesterday was, we need someone to go into the code and print logs for what happens when the network halts. So ideally, this person would go into the Rust code, trace from when DM loads, like these parameters all the way through when it gets checked everywhere in the source, and sort of report back on what metrics might be stopping the network. And some of these metrics that we're hoping the person could look at are the connection back off base, connection check interval, ping timeout, ping failures tolerated, and max connection delay. So again, like hoping to get someone to kind of dive in and do a little bit more research as to what might be halting the network. We're also looking at sort of the process of potentially making the production of VDFs less taxing on the network. So either kind of making them, more lightweight or processing less of them. But this is sort of a load on the network that's like causing some issues. On the make whole side of things, Adal has been able to stress test the Carpe app for the make whole functionality. There was an issue observed with regards to like a corrupted file, but this is being further researched. So yes, some good progress made on the make whole stuff. That's it for me. So.
Okay, thanks a bunch for that. Comstark, do you want to jump in and take care of Hustle Karma?
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, for those who don't know what Hustle Karma Working Group is, this is the working group where essentially all the people running bounties come and ballers brokers meet up and talk about the things that had happened that week, challenges we're facing, successes, and what payments are going out, and we keep a log of it. So if you guys are interested in payments in Discords or DAOs, pardon me, this is the place to come, and you can always just sit and listen, and we'd love to just see you to learn a little bit. So essentially for all the different groups, things seem to be going quite a bit. So for engineering, there's a bunch of bounties out. The big thing I think here is we're looking for a networking czar. So someone who really understands that and can overtake it. There's a Bridge UI and Web UI bounty out right now. And so those are the things going on in the engineering work group. Wade created a new GitHub site for Gitcoin bounties. So essentially it's going to allow us to link up our bounty claims into something more substantial. So Airtable doesn't connect into Gitcoin, but if we can create GitHub site for our bounties, we can then create it into Gitcoin and have a real tracking through, as I understand it. On the analytics team is another good one to talk about. So they're actually recruiting for data scientists. So if there's anyone who really wants to do analytics, this is a great place to come. There's essentially 3 people right now. They all have a ton of experience. Saturn's an engineer. 2 of the other people also have technical skills within the analytics group. So they're looking for data scientists. If you're of interest, you have skill, or you don't have skill, but you want to put in a little bit of work and learn, this is a great place to do it. They're highly understaffed. So essentially, if you want to do it, you can just go into the Discord group, raise your hand and say, hey, I'd love to chat about that. The actual Hustle Karma working group itself, we just kind of spoke again about their 60,000 coin payout for the moderators, which we had talked about a couple of weeks before. And all the new payment systems that we had spoken about are starting the 27th of April. So essentially the next cycle of working group roles are going to get the payments that we spoke about in the previous weeks, which was 40,000 coins per week or 120,000 per cycle, 3-month cycles. And that's the main thing. The last thing is the branding working group is meeting today. There is, if you guys saw, there was a poll going on about our branding as to whether or not we wanted to do the Carpe Diem sun logo or if we wanted to have this key logo. Both of them look phenomenal, but they need to make a decision. So if you want to get your vote in, go into the Discord group for poll and vote because they're going to be meeting today to figure that out. That's it.
All right, excellent. Yeah, on the branding and comms side, glad you mentioned that. The poll for the logo selection is still open. We're looking to close that poll at the end of the day today. So this is your call for the last chance to vote. Jump into the polls channel on Discord. There's instructions there about how to vote, and you'll be able to see the logos and some contextual materials as well. We'd love to have your input on it, and we will then, the branding and comms then will be taking a final decision based on that input. Also, we should mention for the governance working group and the Hustle Karma working group, elections for the next terms for the key roles are right around the corner. Both of those working groups, the first terms expire during the next week. I know that Hustle Karma has elections set for their next meeting, which is May the 10th. So if you have an interest in taking on one of the key roles, and remember the key roles are compensated, please put up your hand, nominate yourself or nominate someone else you'd like to see in that role, and then show up at the meeting for a vote. The coordinators working group didn't meet last week, so there is no update from them. They meet every 2 weeks, so the next coordinators working group is this Friday. Again, all of our working groups are open to everyone. You don't have to be a formal member or elected to anything to show up at a meeting. They're open to everyone, open door policy on this. And then finally, the analytics working group. Our archivist is not with us today, but Comstark hit some of the key points, which is they're really, really looking for resources right now. They are focused primarily on reporting requirements that relate to the Hustle Karma process. We'd like to be able to have a better dashboard so that community members can see exactly the flow of funds and what's going on the Hustle Karma side of things. And the analytics working group is helping us define what those data points are and how best to report out on that. If you're interested in that sort of stuff, like Comstark was saying, the analytics group is really shorthanded right now. Not underhanded, simply shorthanded. So please jump in and join those meetings or jump into the working group channel and express an interest in that. Okay, so that's pretty much the round the room for all the working groups. There's some good stuff happening right now, some really interesting things going on. We'd love to see more bodies involved, but that is the way it is at the moment. I think let's go ahead and shift over and do the network update, and then we will catch a Carpe update from Adal, and then we'll get to the Constitution discussion. So Odie, thanks for joining us up here. Can you tell us a bit about what's been going on with the network across this last week? What's our current state? What did we learn across this last week? And what should we expect across the next week? Over to you.
Hi, folks. Let's see. We've had network instability as we're trying to regrow the validator set. That's how I would describe it. So we had a halt for a couple weeks there while we were, first had a halt and then we wanted to do an upgrade. And so we got our upgrade in, and then we had to sort of regrow the validator set from about 15 validators, and we want to grow them all the way back up to where we were, around 80. The thing about BFT consensus is you can't add people very fast, as it turns out. Because those people just aren't ready to be running nodes. So the operators just don't have nodes that are ready. And then what happens is, if you have 1/3 of your validator set that is slow or unresponsive, you'll get a halt again at a new epoch. So what we were seeing, starting from, last Friday, people would join a new validator set, and then there were too many in the new validator set. We doubled, for example, the validator set one epoch to the next, and then a bunch of people weren't ready, and then the network couldn't make any blocks. And so we halted again. And so we had to do another, halting intervention. So the days are blurred to me. I don't know if I think this was Sunday. And Sunday we got 20 of the validators that were responsive and that were able to, manage their nodes to restart the network. So start with the new validator set. We also introduced a small upgrade there, which limited the amount of new seats in each validator set. This is something that we've talked about for a long time, and other blockchains have this, but we decided that we could only increase the validator set by 15% every epoch. At steady state, this isn't really an issue, but it's really useful and very helpful when the network is regrowing its validator set. So we did that, and that looked like it worked. That was cool to see that work. We also increased the threshold for signing. This is more of a technical thing, but every validator needs to sign blocks, and we had a very low threshold since Genesis as a way to not confuse operators as they're trying to run startup and onboard their validators. But it was too low, so we increased. So every validator needs to sign 5% of the blocks that are being produced, which is still low, but I think it'll help us sort of filter out nodes that are really just not responsive. So I think those are the changes that happen, and that's good. So now it's seen, and another important thing. We've been very proactive on getting all the validators to report to our dashboard in Grafana. And that's super helpful because we were kind of shooting in the dark on a lot of things where we just like say, well, this node seems to be unresponsive. Somebody reach out to that person and tell them to restart, But now that we have basically, and we need to make sure, I think we should have every validator reporting to Grafana, because now we actually have these really rich dashboards where we can see, well, who is receiving more transactions, who is running out of disk space and all of that. So it really gives us a much better way of responding to incidents. And side note, Danielle, I think has created a new role for a network czar or sysadmin czar that will be watching the Grafana dashboards and helping us tune our parameters, our validator node parameters, and reaching out to people and helping them actually sort out their system configs. So I think that would be huge. Those, having that leader doing that with us full time, and having the data from Grafana. So I think those things are going to be instrumental. We still have network instability, and part of that is from re-onboarding Carpe users, we think. So we've had a few small halts, or slowdowns in the blocks when as we start opening up the full nodes that serve Carpe users. Now there are a few things to talk about there, but from an engineering perspective, there are two things we need to solve. One of which is basically the back pressure on the mempool, and this is something that I want to hear some more from Zaki on, and I need some help working on this stuff. But it's not clear that it seems like the system itself is putting in many more transactions than the system can maintain. And the VDF transactions, so the tower proofs, are very expensive on the system. Each VDF, it sounds small, but each VDF verification costs, so to speak, 100 milliseconds or 200 milliseconds of time to verify. And that might seem small, but like when you're opening up the full nodes again to Carpe, and you have, let's say 500 people that are trying to get their backlogs into the network again. So that's 500 times, whatever, they might be sending 3 proofs in a minute. 500 times 3 times 200 milliseconds. Somebody do the math for me here. But it's like you're adding that every second. So let's put it differently. You might be adding 10 seconds of processing every second to the network. And that's fine if you have a queue that will work through it, but it seems like the system is just trying to flush all of them too fast. So I think that's one thing, and that taxes. So eventually, that taxes some nodes. Some nodes won't have enough RAM or whatever, and then they fall over. And then, or they may not fall over, but they just stop responding to where they deprioritize network connections, and then they stop sort of responding to state sync. So that's one aspect. We need to figure out the back pressure on the mempool. And I think there's a silver lining here, because if we can solve this with actually throwing all this load at the network with all these very expensive kind of useless transactions, as soon as we solve this is the next point, as soon as we can reduce the weight of the load of the VDFs on the network, and this is something Shashank is working on, how to make the VDF to the tower game itself tax less the network, then we've really sort of started solving some of the throughput issues with the network. So solving the back pressure is an important thing. And then there's a third thing that we need to do. So we need to change the VDF parameters. That's the second thing. The third thing we need to do is sort out the state synchronization. This is something that might just be, I'm optimistic it might just be parameter tuning, where it seems like state sync stops working after a certain amount of time that no block is produced, effectively. So basically, everybody blacklists everybody for state synchronization. Every validator ends up blacklisting every validator in the state synchronization, and that might just be a parameter tuning, and it's just a question of like sniffing around the code and seeing what can be done. So I think those three things would put us on a very, we'd feel more confident when those three things happen. Where do we need most help is on the mempool back pressure stuff. So yeah, come talk to me about that. I don't know. I said a lot of stuff here. Anybody else? Did I skip anything? Maybe Nudru, you've been following a lot of this. Danielle?
Can somebody talk to us for just briefly about whether we are or are not in recovery mode? And I raise that simply because of the economic implications of that. When we're in recovery mode, we're not paying out to Carpe miners, and our validator set is also not earning rewards. My understanding is that we're not in recovery mode right now. Yet we're restricting the number of validators that are coming in. I know some steps have been taken to avoid economic disparity. Can someone speak about that? Perhaps Danielle, what are the validators doing to avoid something that's really, going to be perceived as unfair?
Sure. So first, to Odie's note that he mentioned earlier, I think another thing that we are experiencing is the fact that one issue that we have is coming from a full node that I operate. And each time that I open that full node to the public, we see a huge rush of backlog or transactions coming through the network. And that causes a lot of pressure on the network. And if I keep the node running for a long time, then it will cause the network to halt, because I think the validator network could not handle that many transactions at once. So in the past 2 days, what we were doing with Odie was that periodically for a few seconds or perhaps 1 minute, I was opening my full node for the transactions, for the backlogs to go through and submit. And then I would close it for a few minutes. Then I again repeat that process. And I think it worked out very well yesterday, until we reached again to the new epoch. I think the backlog on my full node was cleared up for yesterday, but the moment we reached the new epoch, I noticed that we had a spike in our mempool. And my idea was that because we went to a new epoch, the backlogs again started submitting, and that again caused the issue for a slowdown, and a few hours later to have a really short halt. So last night I actually dropped my node again to make sure that the network can come back up. So I think that's something that we have to figure out how to solve as well. So far, periodically opening it up worked very well, but we have to see how we should move forward from now on. We are also monitoring the network really closely with Grafana. So, yeah, that's...
Let me comment on that a little bit. Yeah, so that's what I mean about solving the mempool back pressure. So the network needs to be able to take that amount of transactions, right? So like we couldn't... There isn't a way, and wouldn't really be defensible to try and limit network connections to full nodes. We need to be able to handle that amount of transactions, and so the permanent solution, I think, is learning how the mempool removes transactions. So maybe I'll just do another 1 minute on this just for people's context. So. Because I keep using this word. So the mempool is basically all of the transactions that are trying to be qualified to enter the blockchain. So it's a task queue. And what you want to do with your mempool is you want to reject transactions that are just not valid before they get to the validator. And so we have this effectively this outer ring on the core validators that are the full nodes. And so they filter transactions that are not very useful, that could not be accepted. So when we talk about full nodes and we run these full nodes for Carpe, when a transaction comes into the full node, the full node actually adds it to its own mempool. So it actually like has a list of transactions that it's going to try out on the state of the network first. And then if the full node accepts that transaction, then it'll send it on to the validator. And then the validators have their own mempool, their own list of transactions that they're going to work through. So what we need to figure out is how do the validators, that validators mempool, work through those transactions a little bit, smarter. So, and it's just a part of the system that I haven't really looked at very much, or we haven't looked at in terrible detail. So the back pressure on the mempool is going to be important, and it's the permanent sort of definitive solution. This is the bottleneck of these systems. Anyway, sorry to go too deep into.
No, sorry. This is all good. This is all good information. However, I do want to circle you guys back to answering my original question, which is what's happening on the economics to avoid unfairness in reward payments right now, since we're restricting ourselves to a smaller validator set and controlling how many people can join.
Right. So I think this was all of the sort of validators that were starting up the network. They just made a pledge to donate all of their rewards in this period to whatever different community wallets that they thought were appropriate. So no validators. I guess I'll speak to myself. I'm donating everything I make until whatever, we're 15 days out of the last upgrade. So I think around Epoch 185, I'm donating everything I'm making to the reward. So balances should be unchanged for people in the validator set.
Okay, so we've got a voluntary policy in place then that the validators that are in the set are to avoid unjust enrichment, are diverting the vast majority, in almost all the cases, 99%, because that's the most you can give away, of their coin rewards into various community wallets, which is great. I see we've got a couple of people that are doing slightly lesser amounts, just putting out a friendly nudge to the community. We'd like to see everybody consistently doing this so that no one profits unfairly off of this change in policy, which is being implemented obviously for network stability purposes. So please help us get on board with that if you have not done so already. But I think I'm probably preaching to the crowd here, to the choir here, as I look at the people in this room. I see a lot of familiar faces that I know are in line with this. What should people expect across this next week? What's happening with the network? What's under work right now, and what possible changes might we see across the next week?
It's a good question. The immediate things that need to be solved are some parameter tuning on the validator config files for state synchronization. So I hope we have some new parameters to share today, and that would make us sort of recover faster from a halted network. The next thing that I'd like to see, and Shashank has been leading on this, is getting a new, this would apply to everybody. This would apply to Carpe as well as validators, but to change the parameters on the VDF. It might be a longer discussion there. but to try and get verification time, much lower. So yeah, a longer conversation there. I don't think that can happen this week. Then I think if we can get a few people and maybe some folks from the former DM developers to give us some clues about mempool, transaction removal, that could be a change that we push. Those are the things that I anticipate. But I think right now it's really about regrowing the validator set, giving a lot of, so this is like not engineering stuff, but like giving tech support to validators as they're rejoining, making sure everybody's validators are performing very, as best as possible. So that's my expectation. I think as we're working through the Carpe backlogs, Carpe will be stable again for people. So yeah, and then I'm not speaking in any real order here. You sort of caught me off guard. And then I think the next thing is we'll be able to create a Carpe release that does a few things. I mean, we have some new features in it, which Odal will talk about, but it will also improve sort of network connectivity for Carpe users and reduce the load of requests to full nodes, which I think might improve a little bit.
Cool. Well, we're going to flip over to Adal in just a sec to get the Carpe update. I know there's some other things that it would be nice to dig in a little more on. For example, the mechanics of the vouching system, the slashing, how to avoid the slashing, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a fairly intense and fairly technical conversation that's probably interesting mostly to validators or potential validators. Odie, I think you're doing some office hours today, right? Where people can bring those questions. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm having office hours, not next hour, but the hour after that. So what's that, 1 p.m. Eastern. Come to me with anything you want to talk about.
Man, that's great. Thanks for doing that. I'm sure that there's a number of people who are going to appreciate that and take advantage of it. So awesome. And thank you, as always, for all the work that you've been doing leading engineering. So super good stuff. Adal, talk to us about Carpe, please.
Sure. Thanks, Rick. In the weekend, I was able to test stress the Carpe app controller, and we also had the help of a small group of testers to validate the make whole feature. We also have some improvements, as OD just said, that we must put forward to release the amount of calls to the full nodes. And I think that after that, we are ready to go with a release for the Carpe app. Right now we have a candidate release, which we are testing. But after these small things that we need to do about the connection with the full node, I think we are ready to go. I just would like to add that we had on the web monitor a view which validators can check if they have the proper autopay config in place. And I had also added a new view which calls vouch, where I would like to bring a way to visualize all the vouchers the validators are sending to each other. And if anyone is interested about that, I just posted a print screen on the analytics group. And I'm also planning to bring the SS3 tree to this same view, so we can actually try to reach out the validators through their inviters if we have some problems with the network. I think that's it for today, Rick. Back to you.
Yeah, very cool. I just saw that post in the analytics working group right before the meeting started. That is some important work, so thanks for doing that. And, Carpe just keeps getting better, right? I was looking at the most recent RC. It's more professional. The installation's easy. The look and feel's getting there. So thanks for everything you're doing with Carpe Adal. It's making a difference for sure.
My pleasure.
All right. I want to get us into the discussion of the proposed constitution with the time that we have remaining so that there is a chance for some questions at the end of this. I'm going to go ahead and lead that discussion. This is a project that's been near and dear to my heart that I've been working with the governance working group on. Let me explain the context and then I'll get into the nuts and bolts. When this project launched, it was launched with an extremely pure view towards decentralization. And philosophically, we took a very hard line, or firm line, if you prefer, to avoid creating, a plutocracy. And we wanted the community itself to define the governance mechanisms for the project itself. So, a true decentralization. And of course, that comes with a lot of baggage too, right? It makes organization more difficult. It makes accountability sometimes more difficult. It really is a lot of herding cats, as I'm always joking about. Nonetheless, we've managed to bootstrap a functional organizational schema through the creation of our working group structures. But it falls far short of proper community governance. Okay, so we're functional, but we're not actually engaging in community governance. At this point in time, all governance occurs with on-chain votes by the validator set on primarily technical proposals. At least that's historically been the case. We've got a great group of validators who are aligned in terms of the best interest of the project, and that's been working for us. But, when you're talking about governance structures, you also need to plan for sort of worst case scenarios, right? And what if it's not always the case that all of our validators are good actors? And what if there's a diversion in interests and priorities between the validator set and the broader community that's using the blockchain itself, right? Because those two groups are really joined at the hip, if you will. And while the validators are absolutely essential to providing the infrastructure, they really are service providers. And the community itself is the one that's using the technology to do things, right? To create a healthy economy, to create a robust ecosystem, to support a wide variety of ancillary activity that supports not only the community, but the validators as well, right? That's all part of one group. And so having in place a system that allows the community to express its voice and its will and to have its hand on the wheels and drive is something that we really don't have at this point. And so the governance working group started having a discussion about how do we take steps down that path to have true community governance. Maybe there's a DAO at the end of that, for example, but that's, still a few steps away. And the conversation evolved to a point where we decided we thought the right first step was an expression of core values that would take the form of a constitution. And, you can call it whatever you like. Constitution is the label that we've given it. It is designed to be a foundational document, a bedrock doc, a canonical doc, if you will, that nails down shared values that are at the heart of the OL network community. And then those principles, since they are recorded, publicized, and made known and visible, they provide a framework for decisions at a macro level. And they can help inform our decision-making process as we go forward. They provide a foundation for consistent and rational decision-making. And of course, we need to express core values that do reflect what this community wants to do. And we have some guidance from that, from the original post by Otto, right? And so we went back to that document, and we also looked at some of the things that the community has done across the last few months, right? Things like setting up a working group structure, making sure things are transparent, making sure they're open for all, making sure that the working groups are voting for their own leadership. What sort of principles could we derive from that, right? What egalitarian governance principles can we extract from that? And we've come up with 7 core values for the project. And mind you, I should probably pause for a second and say, I'm introducing this document. It is a proposed constitution. There will be a community vote on this, and I'll explain how that works in just a second, and there will be a discussion period as well. So if you want to take issue with any of this, or you want to propose other values or wordsmith these values, there will be time for this. This isn't a fait accompli that's already been implemented. This is an introduction to the community of this concept. So now that you know where we're going, what are those 7 core values that we've espoused? And they are, and I'll go into more detail in a second, but in short, the 7 values are merit, equity, diversity, network integrity, decentralization, permissionless, and do good. Now let's go back and look at each of those. Number 1, merit. The Constitution says, we are a community of doers who believe that those who serve our community and its vision should be rewarded and given a voice in shaping our community's future. Number 2, equity. We're a democratic community that values fairness. We welcome all and actively seek to avoid descending into plutocracy. 3, diversity. We strive to build an inclusive and diverse set of stakeholders as we recognize that a diverse community is a resilient community. 4, network integrity. We take the state and security of the network seriously and will not lightly take actions that impair or threaten them. 5, decentralization. The project should always strive towards decentralization. 6, permissionless. We will strive to keep the network and the community open to all. And 7, do good. We believe that generating positive social impact is everyone's responsibility, and we pledge a portion of this community's output to furthering social good and humanitarian relief. Okay, those are what we as the governance working group have landed on as an agreed set of core values for the project that reflects our history to date and our aspirations going forward. And you'll note as I read some of those that some of them are aspirational. They're fairly general in the sense that they say we will strive and we aspire to, or we believe, right? Because this Constitution is not supposed to be something that's bogged down in the operational details. That's built on top of the Constitution. The Constitution is how we calibrate making those decisions and implementing those mechanisms. Now, what we plan to do with this has been circulated in the community. We haven't gotten a lot of engagement on it, which is a bit disappointing, but we are going to try again and open this up for a comment period. And then we are going to put this into a community poll for a community vote on Monday. So between now and Monday, we encourage you to take a look at this, make comments, engage on it. We'll be posting that into the general forum, the general channel, and also into the poll discussions channel. And hopefully everybody can jump in, take a look at it, ask any questions, engage around this, and let's see if we can find and build consensus on a set of core values that let us scale up this project going forward. What would be the next steps? And then I'll shut up and open this up for questions. Well, there is a interim governance proposal that the governance working group is finalizing right now that builds on top of this Constitution, and it would be setting up a steering council that's made up of the people who are actively engaged in the project who will have a voting capacity on behalf of the community. Those documents are worthy of another discussion. We're hoping to do those next week at the community meeting. We'll see how that goes. The governance working group meetings tomorrow. We have to finalize some things before we're ready to do that. But I feel confident that if it doesn't come to community meeting next week, it will come to community meeting the week after. And that becomes our first really significant step on the path to proper community governance. There are some other things that we can do and we might want to look at. But, until we get that foundation document, the Constitution in place, it's sort of difficult to have some of these discussions because we don't have agreement on fundamental principles. So I am going to be quiet there for a moment and open this up for questions or comments. If you are in the audience and you've got a question or a comment, just put up your hand and I'll bring you up to the stage. And those of you that are on the stage right now, you guys are active doers in this project. I see you in a lot of these meetings. If you've got anything that you'd like to say about this proposed constitutional document, I'd love to hear it right now. And if not, no problem. We will be opening this up to the community for conversation today. Okay, let me see what else we have on our agenda for today. That's the end of the formal agenda. I'm just going to open the floor for questions for anybody on any topic at this point in time. If you've got a question or a comment you'd like to make, raise your hand. I'll pull you up here on the stage. I'll give everybody a minute to figure that out. All right, as you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and roll through our final wrap-up reminder items. Reminder number one, we're going to close the polling on the logo design today. So please jump in and express an opinion on that. The Branding and Comms Working Group, which meets immediately after this working group at the top of the hour, is going to start working next on look and feel for the websites, information hierarchy for the website, trying to get us a standardized look across the OL.network site, the handbook site, and probably also, I would assume, the Explorer, but that has yet to be determined. So we do need to finalize that. So get in and express your opinions on that today. It is your last chance before we close that. And then a reminder that the Hustle Karma Working Group and the Governance Working Group are both going to have key role elections very soon. So it's time to get your nominations in and to show up and vote on those. And then the final item to remind you all about is the interim governance proposal that I mentioned a while ago is going to be discussed tomorrow at the Governance Working Group. So if you have an interest in engaging on that, you can get involved directly with the Governance Working Group on that, and we would be very happy to see you. Okay, I am not seeing any questions from the crowd. So those of you that are up on the stage, any final matters, or we're going to start wrapping this up?
Yeah, Rico, just to make life easy for everybody, if somebody did want to apply for a working group role, what would be their process?
Yeah, just jump into the working group channel, so there's a governance working group channel, there's a branding and comms working group channel, et cetera, et cetera. There's one for each of the working groups. And just say in there that you would like to nominate yourself or you would like to nominate somebody else. And that's all it takes. It's very, very straightforward. We're trying to keep the process light.
Sweet. And if I can add in, just to encourage everyone, if you're involved in other stuff, don't be intimidated by joining one of the groups or raising your hands. Most of us haven't been here for too long, and everything's super welcoming and everybody is willing to help out. So if you even have an itch to join something like the analytics group or one of the working roles, raise your hands, try it out. You can't fail on it.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And I'll just echo that. I mean, I'm involved in a couple of projects, and this is by far the easiest group of people to work with. And there's a lot of flexibility here. It's really early days. There's plenty of opportunities for you to actually influence this project in a meaningful fashion. All it takes is your willingness to show up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up right now. First off, thank you all for coming to the meeting. It's good to see you here, and please engage in the Discord server. There's a lot happening right now, some important work from the tech side to the governance side to the branding and comms side, all sorts of things to be done. Also, a quick shout out to Wade. I don't know if Wade's still in the crowd. He was here earlier. He's done some really great work in getting our bounty system hooked into the Gitcoin network. And so we're now pushing out bounties through Gitcoin, which is huge for us because it gives us access to a much larger pool of workers. And we're already starting to see results from that. So kudos, Wade. Thanks for that a bunch. And that's all I've got. And I just want to say thank you all for being part of this community. And I will see you next week at the same time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.